Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Margy Bartley joins us here once again. Excited to have her joining us. And we're going to talk today about all the work she does. I mean, she's a woman with many, many titles. I'll have her introduce herself because this woman amazes me. Go ahead, tell us. Jack of all trades, master of all.
You bet. Well, I've been doing it for so long, so I have garnered a lot of experience, a lot of certification. Yep. I'm a nationally board certified health and wellness coach. I'm a certified personal trainer, certified group fitness instructor, certified food psychology coach, behavior change coach, or behavior change specialist, diabetes prevention coach. I've got a few more corrective exercise specialist and certified personal fitness chef. And we could kind of go on, but we don't want to go too long. But
yeah. We're excited to have you here. Remind us of the name of your company and how we can reach you.
Almonds and Oranges Health, and you can reach me via Instagram at Almonds and Oranges Health, and you can DM me there, follow me, take a like to any of my posts and follow me there, or you can reach out on, it's called InWell, and it's IINWELL.com, and that is a health coaching platform through the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, which is the health coaching school that I graduated from.
Awesome. And we're excited to have you here. I know we're going to start by talking a little bit about eating patterns and how that differs from diets. Would you mind sharing what that even means to some people who might say, what's my eating pattern?
Exactly. Yeah, it's a good thing to consider as well. And the eating pattern is the way that you typically eat consistently and have over time. It is not a judgmental thing. It doesn't say, just saying eating pattern doesn't necessarily imply that is all healthful choices. It just means what is the style of eating that you typically have that you are consistent with the most. And versus a diets, as we probably mostly know, are based on certain structured ways to approach it with generally some type of restrictive aspect to a diet. An eating pattern is not talking about any kind of restrictions. It's just saying, hey, what do you eat? How do you eat? How much of these things do you eat?
Got it. So eating patterns. So we got to establish what that is. Are we able to change our eating patterns?
We sure can, and hopefully, well, if we need to. So if you already have established a fairly healthful eating pattern, then you might not need to change anything. And that is one of the things that if you were working with me as a health coach, we would take a look at. I would have you write down things that you eat. We could either go through it talking, or I like to see some food logs from people. And again, a food log is not any kind of judgment. You're just writing down what to eat for breakfast, what to eat for lunch, dinner, any kind of snacks, and all of that goes into it. And I like to see it at least for a week, sometimes for 2 weeks, because we are not always, something occurs in the week that's unusual for you. Maybe there was a party at work or a family gathering that typically, so you didn't eat great. That's not typical for you. Let's not count that towards getting an idea of what you're consistent with. And eating patterns also go back to, for example, childhood. If you were raised by parents who were on the go a lot and maybe did a lot of fast food, a lot of junk foods, a lot of processed foods because that was the easiest, then that might have established that type of an eating pattern for you. On the other hand, once we're adults, a lot of people start to want to pay more attention to their health. And so they've already tried to make some adjustments and improvements to whatever their eating pattern is. So the eating pattern just wants to look at and establish what is going on for you. And then several factors go into adjusting that. If you are already eating fairly healthily, you have a lot of fruit and veg, you are drinking a lot of water, you have whole grains, you have lean proteins, then the tweaks to your eating pattern might not be great. But if you are someone who does rely a lot on fast foods and junk foods and processed foods, then there's probably a lot of room for tweaking. So that's also what you want to look at. And also looking in the terms of how do we know what's healthy or what's not? What do we want to see as far as nutrients? And you want to look at what you are missing as well as what you are already are including, because you might just need, again, some tweaks here and there, but you are different than everyone else. You have a different need, what are your goals for your health? If you're already at risk for biometric concerns, for example, like if you have high cholesterol or you have high blood sugars, then that would be a different approach to how to adjust that eating pattern with those in mind. If you're someone who's only just looking to have more energy, maybe drop a few pounds, then there would be another way of looking at it. And if you're somebody who's already exercising regularly, that's another factor to put into that. So you want to look at what are those nutrients, what's missing, what do you need, how can we adjust it as you move forward with that. So some factors to go into that, but not that you need to be following what your best friend does.
Now, also, I know we're going to talk about body image, some of the other things, functional aging, some myths and facts about nutrition and exercise. What did you have for us next?
Well, actually, I just wanted to do the eating pattern today. I'd like to
Sure.
do body image next week, but you
Oh,
bring
good. Okay, I'm sorry. I
Yeah.
thought
No, that's okay. That's okay because the reason why I was listing some of those topics is because they really do tie into each
they
other.
do. Hmm.
And the eating pattern very much ties into body image and eating disorders and disordered eating. So eating disorders are different than disordered eating, two different kinds of things. All it is a reversal of the word, but changes the meaning of that. And I'm actually really glad that you mentioned that, because the eating pattern that we can establish as children really influences us as we get older, because it also impacts how we see our body. If we are raised in a household where dieting is the norm, we have one or both parents who tends to want to diet or be very restrictive with foods, that sends very different messages to children. And it influences how we are seeing food. Food is nourishment. Food is necessary. Can't live without food.
Yeah.
But when we diet and when we have the example for constant dieting, it's very hard for us to grow up with ideas of how food is a nourishment. We tend to see foods more as enemies. How can I eat when everything I eat, I always feel like I'm bad for eating it? So I have had adults that I've worked with that experience this because they had parents that were so concerned that they'd be overweight as children. They weren't overweight, but their parents had weight issues. So they wanted the children to make sure they didn't get weight issues. So they were so restrictive and controlling, to the point that sometimes I've heard stories of parents that made their children weigh in every morning before they went to school, and they couldn't eat unless they were with the parents. The parents saw and knew what they were eating. So it backfires. We don't learn to manage food. We don't learn to make our own choices. We don't learn to trust ourselves with the choices of food when those are the messages we're given. And that is part of that overall healthy eating pattern. I've also seen it in a context of the approach that, well, I don't want my child to think like a food is bad or this is good, that's bad, don't eat that. So they'll go the other way and they won't give sweet, sugary desserts and treats and candies any different weight than eating a fruit or a vegetable. They try and present it to the children. This is all the same. But then, of course, what do we all choose? Everybody wants the cupcake and not the apple. And so you also see that thing, like they don't we grow up then, some of these children grow up with the idea like, well, why is an apple that big a deal? Why should I eat the apple? There's no problem to eat the cupcake. And while sometimes they are not overweight, they're not healthy. So we have to also understand that weight is not always a good measure of what kind of health you have. You can be thin, you can be skinny, you can be slender, and still have health problems. So it's not okay to say, well, just because somebody is skinny, I wish I looked like that. They might not be all that healthy. And that goes back to nutrients again. So while you might not want your child to feel like a cupcake is bad, it's honestly not as good as eating an apple, right? And we also need to move away from using the food as rewards. So when somebody does really well with a school paper and comes home with a good grade, we want to treat them with food. We want to, okay, today you can have 2 cookies.
Give them soda. You can have soda today. Yes.
Soda today. Yeah. And years ago, I read a quote that has always stuck with me, and I do not know who to attribute it to, but it said, "Do not reward yourself with food because you are not a dog." And that is so true. If you want a reward for something, rewarding yourself or rewarding somebody else for any kind of good behavior or good outcome, think of something besides food. Children don't need to have candy as a reward, because then we also get back into what are foods, they are good or they are bad. And then if we have a bad food, then when we consume it, we think, oh, I'm bad. And so that goes back into that healthy eating pattern too, or an eating pattern. If my eating pattern is I start to feel bad about myself, or I'm going through stress, so I start consuming a lot more of bad foods, then all that does is continue to contribute to the idea that I'm bad, or that where I'm at in life is bad. So eating patterns really, really, really influence how we see ourselves and how we see our body image and our health in general. Oh, I can only be healthy if I'm good? No. That's not how that works, So we have to think about the messages we send when we are choosing foods that we feed our family. When people want to go on some of those diets, for example, keto or paleo or any of those, some of those diets are very restrictive in the context of food groups. So, for example, keto does not do much of the grains, breads, that kind of thing. Keto is very heavy on the fats and the proteins. And I'm not going to go into detail about any diet, but one of the reason why I mention is because one of the issues that we see too in health coaching field is when we have parents that go on these diets because they want to lose weight fast and they think that this is the way to do it. That is also the message you are giving your child, right? That this kind of food is not good. Don't eat the breads, don't eat this, don't eat that. And I'm only going to eat a lot of proteins, a lot of fats, a lot of things like that. That's what keto allows. But then you also get the flip side of what that is.
Oh, it's so confused. My
Oh.
6 and 8-year-old, all they eat is chicken nuggets, French fries, pizza. My little guy likes vegetables and fruits. The older one doesn't eat any fruits and vegetables, but he's like me. That's how I grew up. And he just doesn't want to, hoping his palate will expand one day like mine did when I got older. But it's also hard to teach the kids. I tried and one stuck to it, like the good eating, the other one didn't. And, every kid's different. And you're right, but I'm guilty as a mom to treat them with that cupcake, treat them with that soda. It's a bad pattern, and I got to break it myself just thinking about me.
No, it's good to hear personal stories too. And when I'll tell you, when my kids were younger too, I didn't, even though I've been in health for so long, the idea of what I just said about don't reward yourself with food because you're not a dog didn't hit me until I read that quote. And then I realized, oh my God, yeah, that's true. There's so many other ways I could be rewarding my children for good behavior, good grades, whatever it might be. Hey, you did a fantastic job with this or that. Let's go to the bookstore, let's buy a book. Let's, have a friend over and we'll watch movies or, whatever it might be. But that really hit me. And I thought, oh my goodness, right? That's kind of the message that we get. But that's also typical of what we see in general, right? In society, this is what we think we need to do. This is the approach we have. That's why, they have, if you sell so many magazines at school in this class, they get a pizza party, So there's a lot of different approaches with that. And so, let's talk about on a small scale, I'm not saying don't ever reward or treat your child with a cupcake or a cookie or something, but we might want to think outside the box and not reward them with it every time, right? So it's okay. Sometimes, hey, I'm the first to tell you, I've got a sweet tooth. Well, love some of the baked goods. And so it's not that I will never go and have a cupcake or a cookie from the bakery or something, but I don't want that to be my go-to every time I feel like I need a little self-care, a little treat or a little something, or the same with my kids, I started to really expand that once my awareness was brought to it. And I thought, wow, that is really a good idea to try and do something different and make it not so tied up with food. And then because we don't know until time has passed that some of what that was to our children. Mm-hmm. So when I talk with adults about their healthy eating patterns and things that they learned when they were younger, until you start to articulate it, then you're like, oh yeah, that's right. Well, my mom, my dad, and this is not to say anybody's a bad parent, right? Because we do what we can and we do what we know. That's the other thing. We do what we know.
True, we do.
Yeah. So we just need to learn to kind of review that healthy eating pattern. And we can fall back on the 80-20 rule. It's sometimes also called the 90-10 rule, which means 80 to 90% of the time you eat just as healthy as you can. And 10 to 20% of the time you do the indulgences. You have the treats, you have the snacks, you do whatever it is you want to do. But also in the big picture too, just take a look at your own eating pattern in relation to your own health. There's a little checklist you can even go over with how's my sleep? How is my energy? How's my exercise? How do I feel I function? How's my brain health? Because all of those kinds of foods, high sugar foods, saturated fat foods really impact your ability to sleep well, to have energy, and to think well. And if you feel like you're foggy headed a lot, that's not really what you want, right? Yeah.
So what else should we be learning about as far as, well, I know we were jumping to body image, but I guess back to not the diet, the eating habits that you wanted to share?
Yeah, no. So just take a look at your plate and think about if you feel as though there's one or two areas that you could start with. Just start with one. It's not all about an overhaul. And I see this frequently too with people. As a society, again, I think we think it's all or nothing. I got to change everything or nothing. And then that never lasts, right? It's all or nothing just never lasts. So you want to just start with one area. And I always encourage people to start with water. It's one of the easiest things and one of the most underrated things you can do for your health in terms of long-term impact. We do tend to, again, as a society, drink way too much sugary sweet beverages, way too much. And most people are underhydrated. Now, I'm not saying dehydrated, I'm saying underhydrated. If you feel thirsty, you are dehydrated because thirst is a symptom of
Reminding me. Thank you.
That's right. Mine is always, my kids carry water bottles everywhere they go because we did this from the time they were little, and so they always have one. But coffee is dehydrating. Now, I'm not saying coffee is bad. There are actually some good healthful properties to brewed coffee. There you go. Got
them both.
That's right.
No soda. I'm not a soda drinker.
Yeah.
I am a coffee drinker and water lover.
Yeah, that's excellent. Well, black coffee, brewed coffee has some really good healthful properties. It's high in antioxidants and it's good for intestinal health. But if you're adding a lot of sugar and creamers to it, not so good, so you want to go with, a non-fat milk or one of the almond cashew milk, something like that might not be high in saturated fats, wouldn't be high in sugars. And when I say sugars too, I'm referencing added sugars and not natural sugars, because those are two different things too, but that would be another topic for another day because there's a lot of information around the sugars as well. But just start with water. Most people don't get enough water. Soda is actually, as we really do know, really bad for you. Even if
I tell my kids all the time, I'm sorry, and I could say this because it's just me saying it, but I'm like, soda causes cancer. That's what I tell everyone. I'm sorry, you hate me for it, but people say it. There's studies. I'm not a doctor. I'm not anything, but I believe in it, and I try to tell my kids that. So every time they want a sip of soda because they're kids, I'm saying, remember, you're going to get cancer. My mother, May died of cancer. Don't drink soda. So yeah. That's my motto. Again, I don't know if it's really true or not, but that's what I tell everyone.
Well, there is evidence that overall diets that include soda, a lot of soda, those people tend to have higher rates of cancer. So are we saying it directly?
Does it cause it? Does it part of it? Does it? Yes. There's some connection. Go ahead. Yep.
Yeah, right. Exactly. There is some connection there. You can kind of see it. Also, what I encourage people to look at too is the ingredient list on soda. There's actually chemicals like butane and things that they use in carpet cleaners that can be added. It's also because of the carbonation in it, it causes bloating. So you're going to feel bloated a lot. Carbonation is a gas and gas expands. That's why we burp when we drink soda. But depending on the amount that you consume, you're going to end up with some bloat because of all of that you're consuming. Also, even if it's a fake sugar, an artificial sugar, so you're drinking a diet soda, if you are at risk for diabetes, if you have high blood sugars, or if you are been told that you are pre-diabetic, or if diabetes runs in your family, type 2 diabetes, the artificial sugars are designed for your body to think they are sugars. So they are chemically designed to mimic sugar. That's why they give it a sweetness, right? But your body doesn't know the difference between a fake sugar, real sugar. So when you consume an artificial sugar, your body will still release insulin to work with getting the sugar out of your blood system, which if you are somebody that drinks a lot of soda, and I've talked with people that drink 3 to 4 liters of soda a day, your pancreas can go into insulin overload, right? It goes insulin fatigue and it just won't work anymore. And that's when we start seeing the blood sugars climbing really high. So even if it's diet, that doesn't mean that it's good for you. The difference with diet is it's not calories, but that doesn't mean it's good for you, or it doesn't mean it doesn't have an effect. It does have an effect. So that would also be part of that eating pattern to look at. I have talked with many people that have said, well, I thought that the diet soda would be okay for me. But here's the other thing is,
isn't the same thing that's in, I'm sorry, I don't know the correct name of it, but it's in like Sweet and Low or phenol something. It's like it's a sweet and low it says on the back causes cancer in laboratory animals. I'm like, well, why am I putting this in my coffee?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Why put it in your coffee? If it makes animals sick, we shouldn't be consuming it either. No. Yeah. And one of the correlations with soda and cancers is that people that tend to drink diet soda tend to also be higher in consumption with junk foods and fast foods, which are also really bad and more chemically laden, which also continues to. So when people say, well, how does that cause cancer? Well, one of the things that it does is those chemicals weaken your cell walls, and your cell walls then become more susceptible to disease like cancer. When you drink, or not drink, but eat foods high in what are called antioxidants. So I think most people have heard antioxidants, although not everybody understands it for good reason. It's a lot of that food and nutrition information can be confusing. Antioxidants are foods that actually strengthen the cell walls so that they don't oxidize and break down, and makes them stronger and more resistant to disease. So you want to consume foods higher in antioxidants. Well, what are the foods higher in antioxidants? Usually, let's go back to fruit and veg. And the darker and the more colorful, the higher they are going to be. So for example, when I say darker, more colorful, blueberries, raspberries, blackberries, foods that, the fruit and veg that don't, that last longer, because they are darker. So dark in phytochemicals, if you can get as many fresh foods as possible into your system in a variety of colors. So eating the berries, eating oranges and apples and kiwis and papayas and whatever you've got in your area. And that's another thing that factors into eating patterns is, where do you live? What kind of access do you have to food? And that's regional. If you live southern, you're going to have more access to certain foods there. If you live in the north, you have access to other foods up here. If you live on a coast, one of the coasts, you might have more access to fresh seafood. So all of those things also affect what your eating pattern is going to look like. And then also ethnically, what are the foods that are being passed down to you in your family? So yes, your parents can teach you how to eat, whether that's junk food or fast food or health food, or it's always cooked, or it's always this.
But it's arroz con pollo. My sister's house is Puerto Rican, so every time we go to the house, she wants to make us a soup and rice and chicken, and it's so funny. Yeah. It's our staple. Yep. We all have a staple: the Italian gravy sauce, or the meatballs on Sunday. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's really important to eat the food that ethnically are the traditions for our families. I grew up the same way with a lot of those ethnic foods that were in my family that my siblings and I got from our grandparents, that from aunts and uncles. So you don't have to eliminate anything. That's part of your eating pattern. So foods I grew up used to are totally different than somebody else, both ethnically or regionally or culturally, whatever that might be, is different from them. But that again, I want to put that out there, because we don't need to change our diet to accommodate somebody else's cultural preferences, I guess would be the best way to say that. So when we say, oh, here in America, this is typical, people eat steak a lot or burgers. That doesn't mean somebody who is Puerto Rican or what I want to say, Korean or something, need to start eating a lot of beef if that is not something that's typical for your family, right? And in fact, when research has been done on what they reference as the standard American diet, they found out that the standard American diet is not good. So the typical American eats very poorly as far as health is concerned. And they use the acronym for Standard American Diet, SAD, to describe it. The standard American diet is very sad. It's just not right. And so quite often other cultures ethnically might have a much more healthful approach to what their eating pattern is, because they're not eating a lot of the processed crap that Americans eat. But sometimes you have to go back to the balance in nutrients or also your amounts. And I think sometimes that's also something that gets lost with individuals, is they forget that even if it's really healthy for you, healthy food has calories too. So even though it's really healthy, you don't need to eat a ton of it, right? Yeah. Back to balance, go back to a healthy plate, and make sure you get the variety of things. So even culturally, some cultures, some Asian cultures eat a lot of rice. Yeah. Well, a lot of white rice is maybe not so good. Now, culturally, if they're not having any problems with that, then that's fine. But we do see with a lot of immigrants to the U.S., after they've been in the U.S. for a while, studies have found that once they have started eating like Americans, their incidence and risk for disease goes high. High. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Because they don't have access to what were their cultural foods, what their heritage was. So maybe they start adapting that. Or they start. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. All right. Kids go to school and eat like their counterparts and not
good. All right. We're out of time.
Okay.
Yeah. Great show. Great topic. Great everything. Margy, how do we reach out to work with you? Would you mind sharing?
Not at all. Please message me on Instagram at Almonds and Oranges Health. Almonds and Oranges Health, sorry. And you can reach out to me on the platform IINWELL.com. I'm on the platform there with a lot of other coaches, but you can just put my name into the search bar and pull me right up, and you can contact me there.
Thank you, Margy. Have a great day and an even better weekend. We'll talk soon. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.